Murphy's Builder Supply is where you need to go for all your home improvement projects and hardware needs. They've been serving folks in this area since 1946. Murphy's offers some products and services that you may not know about. They now sell ammunition, both bullets and shells. Murphy's also sells personalized tags for dog collars. They build customized screens for windows and doors. Murphy's can rekey locks, and of course they can make keys. They cut glass for windows, plus Murphy's has monthly door buster specials. Check their Facebook page to see what's on sale. Murphy's Builder Supply, 156 Northeast Broad Street, Jessup.
Damon's Famous Fingers and Wings restaurant in Jessup is now open for business, practicing social distancing, but still serving that great food that Damon's is famous for. Come inside or come through the drive-thru, but Damon's is open inside and welcomes back its customers. The menu's the same, the service is fast, and the food is fantastic, and the sauces remain the same, mild, wild, insane, or inferno. The number is the same, 588-WING, 588-9464. Damon's Restaurant on West Cherry Street in Jessup. Dining room now open for business. Come on in and enjoy a great meal today.
A bank that puts people first. First Southern Bank, investing in you since 1907. Serving Jessup, Patterson, and Waycross. A true community bank led by experienced neighborhood bankers that live and work in our community. Offering competitive loan options for commercial and consumer clients. Stop by the Jessup branch and meet branch manager Mandy Yeomans and her fantastic team. Call 912-810-1540. Let First Southern Bank be your bank of choice. First Southern Bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
8:03 here at the Big Dog WIFO World Famous Butch and Bob Show, brought to you by Murphy Builder Supply, Damon's Famous Fingers and Wings, and First Southern Bank. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Jonathan. We've got Stephen Meeks, State Representative, on the phone with us. Mondays with Meeks going to wrap up this General Assembly session, which ended on Friday. And Stephen, appreciate you being here with us on the show to get your thoughts on the session. Again, it was a mad dash to the finish, but the budget did get passed. Your thoughts on the budget? Again, it looked like a 14% cut when you went up to Atlanta, but the governor got it all the way down to 10%. So I know a lot of people were happy with that.
Yes, sir. Good morning. And it was a mad dash to the finish for a historic session of going into as late in the year as we have. It was always interesting comments from leadership saying that, usually we try to get out by Easter, but this year it was like, let's just finish up before the 4th of July. And but it was a dash to the finish and completing the budget, which we passed late Friday afternoon before we adjourned sine die. And Bob, as I begin to talk about the budget, I anticipate that Chairman Tillery will be on later in the week, and we'll talk more in depth about the budget. But I want to say to the listeners and to this community that Chairman Tillery and Chairman England did tremendous work in lessening and softening the impact of reduced revenues and what a budget would have looked like, particularly without a revised state revenue from revised revenue estimate from the governor. But I also want to just say to Chairman Tillery, he owes a tremendous amount of thanks stepping into the role that he stepped in as chairman at the time that he did, and getting up to speed very quickly. I mean, I hope that our listeners really understand the importance of that and how quickly he assumed that role and just doing great work. And we certainly appreciate his leadership. But in terms of the budget, obviously education continues to be the number one recipient of funds from the state budget of about 44.1% overall. And given where we started, we were able to lessen the impact of those budget cuts on education. With QBE did receive a reduction in state revenues, but the equalization and sparsity grants were provided at full funding and no reductions there. No reductions to pupil transportation, and pre-K was fully funded. So, while we had some challenges and we did have some reductions, I do believe for Wayne County overall, with education, it's a reduction of 5% in state funding. We were able to pass a balanced budget that included no furlough days for teachers. Obviously, it didn't include the highly anticipated pay raise that we had included in the House budget before we took a break for the COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of good things did come out of the budget, even though it was reduced thanks to a revised estimate from
And we had Representative Bill Workheiser on this past Wednesday. He was singing your praises about the coal ash legislation. Explain that, and will the governor sign that into law?
The coal ash legislation we passed through the House, the Senate, and was able to get it across the finish line this week, which brings tipping fees up to $2.50 per ton for going into landfills. And it really, 2 years ago when legislation was passed, tipping fees for coal ash was delayed until 2025. We went ahead and was able to get that up to $2.50 per ton and make it competitive with municipal waste trash. So that was a good win for us. I believe that the governor will sign it. I haven't gotten any indication that he would not do that, but we were pretty excited about that and getting that across the finish line this week as we approach signing die for Friday night.
One law that he's already passed or signed already is the hate crimes bill. We talked with Bill last week about that. He said it was a pretty emotional day. I want to get your thoughts on that, and I'm sure you were there when that was signed into law. It
was an emotional day at state capitol and historic as well. If you remember earlier in the session in March, the House passed the hate crimes bill. I believe it was by a margin of 7 votes, if I remember correctly. The Senate did take that up finally late in the week and got it back to us. And, you know, it's one of those things, given where we are in the nation and the issues that we've been experiencing, and it was time to do it. Georgia was one of 4 states that did not have a hate crimes bill. So it was a historic day, and it needed to, one of those things we needed to do. I felt like it was the right thing at the end of the day, and you know, the governor signed it into law this week with lots of fanfare. We did have protests throughout the 2 weeks we were in Atlanta for different reasons around the Capitol, and I think the members were ready to do it, and it was a good day for Georgia.
And just joining us, Stephen Meeks on the phone with us Mondays with Meeks, state representative on the phone with us. Another bill that was passed is the protection of businesses from lawsuits of people that contract COVID-19. Tell us about that legislation.
Well, it was one that came to us late this week after a lot of maneuvering between and leadership between the House and the Senate, and as we move to a phase of reopening our state and continuing the governor's lessen the restrictions, and folks are beginning to get back out, and hopefully our economy is going to start to rebound. There was a sense of providing some protection for businesses as they reopen, and making sure that they can continue to operate, or particularly for large crowds. I think it was a lot of the genesis for this, and making sure that businesses can have some protection from big lawsuits as they begin to reopen and hopefully get back to an economy that we were before this hit.
One bill that did not get passed is the cigarette tax increase bill that stalled in both chambers. What about the vaping tax? Did they approve that, or did that fall by the wayside as well?
That was approved by the House. I believe that was early Friday when we passed that piece of legislation. Just provides a tax for the vaping products, which was not on the books prior to when the industry started building. So, but yes, sir, we did pass that earlier in the week.
And how soon does the governor sign all these bills? And like I said, he still has the final say. Is that correct? He can nix any bill that he wants.
That's correct. He still has 40 days. 40 days after we adjourn to sign. I know they will start reviewing that process or the process of bill review fairly quickly. If he does not sign it, it automatically becomes law. So in order for it not to become law, then he would have to veto the measure. I haven't heard of any specifics that he may have on a veto list at this point, but 40 days he'll have to review those and either sign or veto
trying to hit on everything I've seen and read. One other thing I saw, there was a push to not have absentee ballots sent out, but I understand that failed as well. So I guess people will be able to get an absentee ballot for this upcoming election.
That's correct. That measure didn't receive any action, so it died in the process. Sure did.
Am I missing anything? Tell us what else, and what's left on the table. Like I said, this was a mad dash to the finish. Anything that was discussed that you think will be something that will definitely be brought back up when you go back next year?
Well, there's always measures in healthcare and trying to improve access to quality healthcare. That there were a couple measures that were brought up that we didn't act on. I think we'll continue to see efforts by the General Assembly and to get around the state and continue to study rural health care and health care in general, and making sure that we're doing what we need to do to provide access to quality health care. And rural hospitals are extremely important. Wayne Memorial and Joe Arardi and his staff have done yeoman's work there at that hospital, and particularly during this time of crisis. And we really need to make sure that we continue to study that. And we did pass some great legislation for pharmacy benefit managers and allowing consumers to make that choice of where they want those prescriptions filled, so they're not funneled to one company or another that may or may not be acting in good faith. So I think we'll continue to see efforts along those lines. I think we'll continue to see efforts on improving internet in rural Georgia. There was some further action on that, and I think we got to continue to look to find ways to address those issues that are most important to your listeners and our constituency and the people of rural Georgia. One thing that did pass, as we talked about last Monday, was the home delivery of alcohol. The Senate did add spirits to that piece of legislation that came to the House and passed. I did not support it. I felt like it was a very slippery slope that we're going down once that starts. But it did pass, and they'll be promulgating regulations for that and how that is done. But we also had some other issues I would have liked to have seen done. There's a lot of conversation about Blackwater rivers and landfills within a 3-mile radius or 3-mile distance from the river. We did not get that passed. We was able to get it out of subcommittee and full committee, but given the timeline, and we really just ran out of time on getting that passed before we adjourned on Friday. But I think we'll continue to see some of these that did not get passed resurface. Casinos did not make it to the floor, sports betting, etc. There was an effort to put that on the ballot for voters to approve it or disapprove it, and I think it tried to tie it back to the HOPE program, HOPE grants, but I don't think that did not make it, so I don't know if that'll be brought back up next session or not when we reconvene in January.
Well, Stephen, the good news, I read an article in the AJC this morning commending both sides, the Republicans and Democrats. They knew it was a mad dash to the finish, but fortunately everybody was able to come together and get things done. Didn't see a lot of bickering going on between the two parties. It looked like everybody worked together to get things accomplished.
Yes, right. I know that Chairman Tillery and Chairman England worked very hard to address some of the issues important to both sides. There were some no votes on the budget. That's usually, as we draw into the session, that's usually one of the bigger controversial items of how things are. I think that there was some disgruntlement among the other party that we didn't raise taxes on in some ways to increase revenue. There was a huge push at the end to eliminate some manufacturing tax credits for the state, and which is important to jobs. And having eliminated that would have been a job killer in a lot of ways. It's very important to our community, to Rayonier and were disagreements, but everybody pretty much came together and understanding where we were and working together as we hit the finish line to do what's best for Georgia and passing a balanced budget.
You know, I talked to Bill and Blake about this. Maybe you can help me. Like I said, the most perplexing thing to me was, like I said, they tried to increase revenue and they wanted to raise the cigarette tax from, it was 37 cents a pack to $1.37 a pack, and they said that would raise over $550 million. So, but the House Speaker was definitely against that. So help me understand that. Why is he so dead set against something that seems like a no-brainer? It's still to be the lowest in the nation as far as the tax goes. Why is he so dead set against the increase in tobacco tax?
I think it comes down to just a philosophical, just not increasing taxes. There was a lot of push for that, as well as the manufacturing tax credit to increase revenues, and we felt like those were important enough to leave in place to continue to promote and to increase job opportunities across rural Georgia. And I think the cigarette tax was one of them as well, that we just, in order to maintain, and particularly if we can do it while not significantly cutting the budget. Again, the governor came back with a revised revenue estimate, which lessened the cut, and we were able to meet the needs with the budget as with the revenue that we were anticipating or currently have in place.
I'm curious, the last couple of days you were up there, this pandemic, the numbers continue to increase in the state of Georgia. Was any discussion up there about what may take place in the next couple of weeks, or is the governor thinking about imposing any restrictions, or have you heard any discussion about that?
As far as any conversation that I had picked up, he was not anticipating adding any restrictions back from when he had previously lifted those. I would continue to encourage listeners to be tested and be vigilant, continue to maintain social distancing, wear masks. From the time that we reconvened, the members were in the House were required to wear a mask on the House floor in committee meetings. Committee meetings actually consisted of a tracing sign-up sheet or a sign-up sheet that could be traced back. We had throughout the 2 weeks a couple of individuals who tested positive, and from that, then letters would be sent out to members that may have been in a meeting room or in an office where somebody had visited that did test positive. So the traceability that was in place at the Capitol to make sure that visitors and members alike were made aware of those who they may have come in contact with. And I would encourage listeners to continue to do that. We've got to continue to be vigilant. We are seeing some numbers rise in rural Georgia, and but we've got to continue to be vigilant until we have a vaccine or other measures that to get the virus under control, and that we can get back to somewhat of a normal daily life.
And I'm just curious, as when the session ended, how soon did Stephen Meeks get out of that rat race in Atlanta back there?
I think the gavel hit at 10:30, and by 11:15 or so, I was in Macon heading south.
There you go, smart man. It didn't take you long to get out of there, right?
all of my colleagues from South Georgia, I think we all headed to the parking deck at the same time, and it was a convoy coming south.
There you go.
But it's a pleasure to represent the district. I know not everybody may be happy with everything that we accomplished, but I think it was a good session. I think it was an opportunity for Georgia to shine in many different ways, and humbled by the fact that I had the opportunity to represent the 178th in Wayne County, and we'll do that again in the next session. So I'm greatly humbled by that.
Well, like I said, any cut's difficult, but like I said, when you first went back, it was projected 14%, and they got it all the way down to 10%, which is still kind of tough, but not as deep as anticipated. And like I said, luckily no state employees are going to be furloughed. I know a lot of state employees, talk to Georgia State Patrolmen, GBI agents, they're happy about that. So a lot was accomplished in a short amount of time. Like I said, look forward to seeing you in Wayne County. Glad you're back home. Again, hats off on getting that coal ash legislation passed. I know a lot of people in Wayne County are happy to see that. So, again, and we appreciate you taking your time to be here on the show on Mondays. Again, we thoroughly enjoy talking to you and Blake Tillery. We'll talk to him tomorrow, and Bill Workheiser on Wednesday. But again, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here on the show, and it's always been informative and fun to talk to you, and glad you're back in Wayne County.
Well, I appreciate it, and again, just appreciate the opportunity to represent the district. And don't hesitate to reach out to me if anyone needs anything during this time. I'm always available. 912-207-0813 is my cell. I look forward to seeing you in the community and community events as we eventually get back to that part in daily life. So thanks so much. I always enjoy being with you.
Always good talking to you, Stephen. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Again, those comments are State Representative Stephen Meeks. Monday with Meeks. Again, tomorrow we'll talk with Blake Tillery. Wednesday with Bill Workheiser as the session has ended. And like I said, Jonathan, they got a lot accomplished in a short amount of time, but they did get the budget passed, which they had to get done. So
amazing what you can do when you're under a deadline.
How are you getting deadlines? Are you getting deadlines?
That's the only way I can work. I buy stuff at like 5 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Can't do it any other way. Have to go into panic mode on a deadline.
It is a deadline.
Because they close at 6, right? Hey, air freshener. Merry Christmas. That's the world famous Butch and Bob Show.
I got to end on that.
That's right. Okay.
I got nothing on that.
World famous Butch and Bob Show on WIFO, brought to you by Murphy Builder Supply, Damon's Famous Fingers and Wings, and First Southern Bank. Good morning from the Big Dog WIFO at 8:24.
And then along came Walker Jones.
The recovery is on at Walker Jones Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. We're talking great finance.